amendment might have questions posed to him or her from colleagues, but they should pose those through the chair when they're on the queue. Okay, Madam Chair, I think that's it for the announcements, the procedural announcements.
All righty. Thank you, Vice Chair Marchand. And with that, we will begin.
Madam Chair, I got my hand up. Please call on me.
Oh, go ahead, Alder. Vice Chair Marchand, I see you now. I have to pay closer attention in
That's
front
right.
of me.
That's a big part of your job tonight.
Yes,
Madam
sir.
Chair, I move items 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Is there a second?
Second.
No, raise your hand.
All right. Alder DeCola, are you seconding?
Yes.
All righty. The item has been moved and second. Discussion, please. Do I see any hands? Alder Marchand, I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 5, 6, 7, and 8 are the enterprise funds that we review every year. We review their budgets every year as part of our budgetary process. And their budgets primarily include revenues that they generate through their own operations. And those budgets are reviewed by their management and their boards. We had good discussions about these funds. They're under some stress, particularly with the pandemic. But given that they're not directly connected to the general fund, I think it's appropriate at this time to move them and send them to the full board. I encourage colleagues to vote yes on this motion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Any other discussion? Do I see any hands? All right. Hearing none, we will vote at this time. Seeing no other discussion, we will vote at this time on items 5, 6, 7, and 8. Yvette Hamilton, yes. Adam Marchand,
Yes.
Ernie Santiago, Sal DeCola,
Yes.
Jeanette Morrison,
Yes.
Taisha Walker Myers,
Yes.
Anna Festa,
Yes.
Richard Furlow,
Yes.
Evelyn Rodriguez,
Yes.
Ron Hurt,
Yes.
and Charles Decker.
Yes.
Thank you. So items 5, 6, 7, and 8 have been moved favorably by our committee to be forwarded to the full board for final approval. Go ahead, Alder Marchand, I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move items 9, 10, 11, and 12.
The item has been moved and I see Alder DeCola's hand seconding. Is that correct, Alder DeCola?
I second it.
Yes. Those items have been moved and seconded. Discussion on those items, please. Items 9, 10, 11, and 12. Alder Marchand, go ahead with the discussion. I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. These 4 items are the tax levies approved by the boards of directors of these 4 special service districts. And it's interesting to see the kind of wide range of scope and scale of these special service districts, from the very large Town Green Special Service District to the very modest Grand Avenue Special Service District. But what they have in common is that they must submit the proposed mill rate, the additional assessment that goes to the member businesses, to their members for approval. And by the time they come to the board during our budget process, they have been thus approved. And so after good discussion with each of with the management of each of these funds, where we learned a good deal about their plans, I think we're in a good position now to send them as they are to the full board, and I encourage colleagues to vote yes on this motion. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Marchand. Are there any other discussion regarding these items with the levies, the tax levies? Any other discussion from colleagues? Seeing no other hand up for discussion, we will vote on these items. Items 9, 10, 11, and 12. I am in favor. Alder Marchand, are you in favor, sir?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Thank you. No, Mr. Ernie Santiago, Alder Sal DeCola,
Yes.
Alder Jeanette Morrison,
Yes.
Alder Walker Myers,
Yes.
Alder Anna Festa,
Yes.
Alder Richard Furlow.
Yes.
Thank you. Alder Evelyn Rodriguez,
Yes.
Alder Ron Hurt,
Yes.
and Alder Charles Decker.
Yes.
Thank you. We're in favor of moving items 9, 10, 11, and 12, submitting those items to the full Board of Alders for final approval. Thank you. Moving right along. Alder Marchand, I see your hand. Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move item 3.
Alder DeCola, I see your hand. Are you seconding the motion to item 3, sir?
Yes.
Okay, that item has been moved.
Madam Chair, we've lost you. Madam Chair, can we hear you? One moment. Momentary glitch. Are colleagues able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So until we hear Alder Hamilton's voice again, I will shepherd us through this item. Item 3 is the capital borrowing item. And is folks, so is there any discussion of item 3? If you would like to speak on item 3, please raise your hand. Any
I seem to
discussion?
be having a little technical difficulties here. I'm sorry.
You're back on, Madam Chair. I do not see anybody raising a hand to discuss item 3. So I think we can vote, Madam Chair. Madam Chair? Madam Chair, can you hear me? Can everybody else hear me?
Yes.
All right. So
I'm
I
sorry. Can you folks hear me now?
hear you now, Madam Chair. I believe we're ready to vote on item 3.
Whew, sorry about that. I apologize. Yes, item number 3. So I think we left off at the point where I lost contact, where I was asking for discussion, and there were no discussions. Am I correct?
No one raised his or her hand, and no one seems to be raising a hand now.
All righty. So all in favor? I am in favor of item 3. Alder Marchand,
Aye.
Alder Ernie Santiago. No, not in the on the meeting. Alder DeCola,
Yes.
Alder Morrison,
Yes.
Alder Walker Myers,
Yes.
Alder Festa,
Yes.
Alder Richard Furlow,
Yes.
Alder Evelyn Rodriguez,
Yes.
Alder Ron Hurt,
Yes.
and Alder Charles Decker.
Yes.
Thank you. With that, all the committee members are in favor of moving item 3 forward to the full board. Go ahead, Alder Marchand. We're now at the substantive items.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move items 1, 2, and 4.
Alder Nicola, I see your hand. Are you are seconding items 1, 2, and 4, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Items 1, 2, and 4 have been moved and seconded by Alder Nicola. Discussion. Where do we start? Go ahead, Alder Marchand.
Madam Chair, I move to amend items 1, 2, and 4.
Okay. Is there a second on that amendment? Alder Nicola, I see your hand as a second on the amending items 1, 2, and 4.
Yes.
Okay. Discussion on the amendment, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think probably I ought to describe what the amendment is.
Yes.
And this will take me a little bit of time because there are several moving pieces to this amendment, which has an impact on each of the 3 items that are currently before us. So I'm going to say a couple words about process. Then I will say a few words about what these amendments are trying to achieve. And then I will go through detail description line by line of what the precise changes are. And I thank colleagues for their patience. So the process has been, I think, a very productive one. After the departmental workshops, the chair and vice chair reminded colleagues, please to submit proposed amendments to us so that we could try to see all the different changes that people were suggesting and come up with some overall view of what would change and try to put something together, a package together. And over the course of time, changes were proposed by various colleagues. They'll have their opportunity to speak on the pieces they've proposed for sure. And over the last couple of days, those suggestions coalesced into a set of changes that have, let's hope, some broad support among this committee and the full board. And I'm very grateful for everyone who participated in this process, certainly all the committee members, first and foremost, but also other colleagues on the board who contributed ideas and discussion to help inform what we have now. And so what do we have? We have a series of changes that tries to do 2 things. One, it tries to soften the blow on our taxpayers, right? The mayor has proposed a 1.53 mil tax increase. We're going to reduce that. This amendment's going to reduce that. This amendment does not eliminate that. 2, this amendment attempts to call all the stakeholders to step up. So that certainly includes the administration, the city staff, because there are cuts that are required that were not proposed. And also some of our major partners in the community, we're asking them to step up as well. So in this framework, we have no one group of stakeholders will be pleased, no doubt, because everybody's being asked to contribute more in some form or fashion. And finally, this amendment attempts to create a reserve of funds that the city government may use in the upcoming fiscal year to fill gaps in our funding or our overages in our spending because of the pandemic and because of the economic impact of the pandemic. We can't yet predict with any certainty what rescissions we might see from the state, for example, and we hope that our great partners in the delegation will protect us from that, but it's reasonable to expect that there'll be some challenges ahead. And we thought it was important for the City of New Haven's budget to have some reserve funds available to plug holes that are likely to come up. So again, soften the impact on our taxpayers, but still ask all the key stakeholders to step up and create that reserve that will hopefully help us weather the crisis that we are in and will continue to be in for a while. So that's the general explanation. And now I am going to share a screen and walk us through the details. With your permission, Madam Chair.
Go right ahead, Alder Marchand. You have the floor.
Does everybody see this? You can just shake your heads up and down if you do.
Yes.
Thank you. So this is a list of the particular changes that are part of the package that I have moved. And it has 4 sections. One is a set of changes that are in the technical amendment that the administration communicated, the communication email to us, that the administration would like us to make. The net effect of that technical amendment is budget neutral. There are some targeted expenditure increases that we'll go through in detail. There are expenditure reductions that we'll go through in detail. And then there are revenue changes. And there's a combined effect of revenue increases and expenditure decreases that create funds that can be committed to 2 different things. One is to mill rate increase reduction. I know that's a lot of words, reducing the increase in the mill rate, and a reserve fund that may help us weather the stormy waters ahead. So let me treat them in turn. And I also just note procedurally that this document is a tool that's used to describe the changes. It's written in plain English. It will no doubt be rendered into ordinance language, complete with budget numbers and section numbers before our second reading. So please forgive us, but we thought it would be more appropriate to speak in plain language in terms, hopefully, that everybody can understand. The technical amendment that the administration has proposed has 9 pieces. And you'll note that the numbers are 2 different colors. There are red numbers. Those numbers are expenditure increases. And there are blue numbers. And those numbers are expenditure decreases. So it's red when you're spending more and blue when you're saving more. Then there's green numbers at the bottom, and guess what? That's revenue. How clever is that? So in this first group, the First Amendment, the mayor, of course, as people remember, proposed eliminating dozens of vacant positions from the city's budget. Unfortunately, or fortunately perhaps, one of those positions targeted for elimination was not actually vacant. And the administration has requested that that position be restored to the budget so that the person in the position may continue to have that job. That's an administrative assistant position in the New Haven Police Department. The next 2 are related, number 2 and 3. They have to do with the impending retirement of our chief civil engineer and the plan, once that position is vacant, to defund that position to $1 and to re-establish a position currently funded at $1 of assistant engineer. Now, assistant engineer is the number 2 position in the engineering department, and our city engineer prefers to have that position available to be filled upon the retirement of our chief civil engineer. And you can see that the positions have similar salaries, not identical, but similar salaries. The next 3, 4, 5, and 6 are title changes for positions within the mayor's office. And the mayor's staff feel that these new position descriptions more accurately reflect the responsibilities of the people in those positions. None of the position description changes affect the salaries of these workers. So there's no fiscal impact. Number 7, in its zeal to comply with the mayor's directive to reduce expenditures, the police department completely eliminated a line that provides funding for maintaining the city's vehicles. They would like that money restored. I'm going to skip number 8 for a second. Number 9, as Alder Morrison pointed out in more than one occasion during our budget process, there has been discussion about programmatic funding that was supposed to be included in the mayor's budget submission, but was not. And that's number 9. That $50,000 has been restored or put in when it was not put in the first place. So number 8 is savings that are anticipated by the city refinancing some of its debt. Now, let me say a word about this, because this is a topic of great interest, of course. This is the routine kind of refinancing that the city does of certain portions of its bonds when they reach a certain maturity and they're eligible for refinancing. In other words, you sell them to a lender who's willing to give you a better rate. And that is sound and prudent fiscal practice. It is not a refinancing that restructures the repayment schedule such that you save a lot now and you have to pay more later. It is simply taking advantage of a favorable interest rate market that we have, and it's sound fiscal practice. And they anticipate $326,000, almost $327,000 of savings from doing that. So when you add all of those things up, the total impact of all those changes is 0. And so my amendment includes those things. Expenditure increases. And I'll go over these briefly because I think that the proponents of these increases will have more to say during the discussion. But Alder Morrison proposed increases in spending to support the expanded operation of the Stetson Library in the new Q House, and also to support to restore funds that were removed from the acquisitions budget. Certainly, we heard compelling testimony from members of the New Haven Free Public Library staff and board and members of the public about how the library system serves the community so well, punches way above its weight in terms of impact versus dollars in the budget. And there was real concern that decreasing that acquisitions budget would unduly hamper that organization. So Alder Morrison has asked that those funds be restored, and it's in this amendment. The city town clerk position, everybody probably remembers that there was a deputy city town clerk who eventually got relocated to the chief administrative officer's office, as I recall. That person has since retired. The position was slated for elimination, but the city town clerk has stated that he very much wishes to have that position back and anticipates a real need in having that position, giving not just the fact that we have a busy election year, but it's hopeful that there'll be way more absentee ballots and other forms of voting than just the typical show up to the polling place and pull the lever, given the pandemic. And so staffing up that office could be a critical need in a very unusual and important election year. Alder DeCola has asked to create an expense fund for parades. Too often in the past, we haven't planfully budgeted for this kind of expense, and instead we've, the event organizers proceeded with their plans and incurred a lot of expense, some of it public expense around police and fire overtime and such. And we were left in the position of trying to seek reimbursement after the fact with mixed results. And so part of the reason for this, and Alder DeCola can say more, is to have a discussion up front instead of after the fact about the real cost to the city of having these major events. And Alder Furlow proposed a $100,000 tree litigation settlement fund in an attempt to support and make more clear the process for residents to seek redress when city trees drop their limbs on their cars and their houses. So the total impact of all those increases is $455,580. That's adding nearly $500,000 to the budget. That's what I said. The next section is expenditure reductions. Alder Furlow has proposed zeroing out item Department 404 NPIP funding. Folks will know that this is the money that the community management teams have been voting on the last few years. And this amendment says no funding to vote on next year. The next group of items, which I call the 0512 package, simply because that was yesterday, and that's when I, as the shepherd of this process, I finally felt I had enough people on board to propose it. But here's what it is. And there have been many people who've contributed to this. And it's a big deal. The Board of Education has requested an increase in city funds of $3.5 million. This amendment gives them $1 million. That's a savings of $2.5 million. There'll be a lot more to say about that later, I'm sure. The next item creates a new budget line. We don't have the precise name for it, but it's something like Extraordinary Non-Board of Ed Operational Unit Savings. That's a very exciting title, I know, but what it is this. It's a budgetary directive to the mayor to achieve additional savings in the non-Board of Ed operational departments to the tune of $3,854,304. That's 2.73% of the total costs of all those departments. And those departments include all the departments of the city where we have workers. So like benefits is a budgetary department, but it's not an operational department. Debt service is a budgetary department or unit, but it's not like a group of people with desks, for example. But engineering and finance and DPW and transportation, traffic and parking and those kinds of departments are operational departments. That's the plain English language we're using here. And the cost, when you pull it all together for those departments, taking out the Board of Ed, is about $142 million. So 2.73% of that is $3,854,304. So we're creating a new budget line, kind of like a vacancy savings line, for example, that says you need to hit this. And you're going to have to go talk with your department heads, with your coordinators, with your staff, with your union partners to figure out how to achieve those kinds of savings. This is tough. It's not an easy target whatsoever. This is on top of the discussions that have already happened among the administration members about how to be lean and mean in these times. The next one is about new positions that the fire chief has proposed, and our response is not this year. We are creating them in the budget, but funding them at $1 each. So no hires will happen in those positions because they're only funded at $1 each. Finally, in this particular group, the budget the mayor presented increased our central utilities line by $660,000 and change, raising it from 7 million to 7.66 million. We're going to knock that down to 7.33 million, and that yields $330,072 in savings. So the impact of all those items, 5 items, is $7,155,580. That's a decrease. Now, of course, you have to take out of that the $455,580 above, and that gives you a net impact of $6.7 million in savings to the general fund budget. But we're not done yet. We also are proposing changes to the revenue side of the general fund budget. I'll start with Alder DeCola's proposal, which is to increase the building permit fees by a couple bucks. And I'll let him talk more about the details for any project over 10,000 square feet. So the intention here is not mom and pop, not your neighbor doing a new kitchen in a multifamily house, but rather folks coming in to build big housing developments, our major institutional partners. We believe that our market is strong enough that this kind of incremental increase in the fee structure won't drive people out of town and will generate more revenue to the tune of $400,000. And then there's the revenue initiative line, which in years past has had plenty of money in them. And those have been dollars that were planned for, but where we didn't yet have a definite commitment to get. And Mayor Elicker very prudently brought that number down to 0. We're bringing it back up to $2.5 million. One place where that could be achieved is an additional increase in the voluntary contribution from Yale. We have certainly heard no shortage of testimony from residents of the city calling on our partner and neighbor, our world famous city resident, corporate resident, to do better, to do more. We recognize that the mayor has already secured an additional amount beyond what last year's allocation was, but we think it's got to be more. And that discussion is going to continue beyond this budget cycle too. No doubt about that. But in the short term, given what we're asking of residents in terms of taxes, given what we're asking of the departments and its staff, we think it's appropriate and fitting to ask more of our major partners, Yale and Yale New Haven, for example, to raise their game as well. So the combined effect of doing all these things, we've had a net decrease in expenditure of 6.7 million, a net increase in revenue of 2.9 million. That gives $9.6 million that of the gap between that the mayor was proposing to fill with the tax increase. And of course, one might be tempted to just put it all towards reducing the general fund budget so we could reduce our tax increase by quite a bit. But we felt like we had to take those proceeds and put them into two pots. One, of course, is applied to the mill rate. So, as you can see at the bottom here to the right, if this amendment passes, the mill rate increase would be 0.75 mils, not 1.53 mils, but 0.75 mils. So we've cut it in half. This is a number that I checked with our Director of Management and Budget, so I'm pretty sure it's correct. That would bring our new mill rate for next fiscal year to 43.16 and not 44.5. I think that's what it was. So we didn't close the gap entirely, but we put a big dent in it. And then the other monies, the other $4.8 million would go into a reserve fund that could be used to plug the gaps that I mentioned before. And so let me end, Madam Chair, by saying that this package of changes was a result of a great deal of discussion among many alders, certainly members of the committee, but others as well, that it represents asking all our major stakeholder groups to raise their game, to contribute more, as painful as that is, whether it's more money out of your tax bill or it's more cuts to your department, whether it means a furlough week, whatever it means, it's meaningful. Whether it means being an institution stepping up and saying, okay, we've heard you, we'll do more. All of those things this budget calls on folks to do. But I also want to say that it remains a budget that reflects our values, right? Previous changes that we made in years past, we are keeping in our budget. We are keeping $50,000 in funding for New Haven Works. We are keeping the startup fund for the Commission on Affordable Housing. We are keeping funds available to study our pension and our healthcare costs. And as you can see in some of these amendments, we are continuing to invest in youth program and youth services. But there are difficult sacrifices this budget calls on many of us to make. We hope folks will face them together with unity and courage and good spirit. And Madam Chair, I encourage colleagues to support this amendment. Thank you.
Okay. Alder Marchand has laid out the amendments that are proposed. At this time, we will start with discussion on the amendments as they've been laid out. I am not able to see hands because they
Madam Chair, would you like me to stop share for a while? I can always.
Yes, please. I was about to say that. Yes.
Yes, I mean.
So that we are able to see colleagues' hands or.
Yep. Okay. So I remind colleagues that they may raise their hand by doing this, but they may also go to the participant screen. You push on your own name and it gives you the ability to raise your hand, or at least it should. Either way, we are looking for who wants to talk. I see, Madam Chair, I see Alder Jeanette Morrison and Alder Festa. We'll start a queue. Are you still with us, Madam Chair?
Here goes the technical.
Madam Morris, Alder Morrison, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I am sitting here today in regards to the amendment,
I'm having a little trouble.
in regards to the amendments made by me, and I'll go line for line. The first amendment in regards to the $100,000 to pay for the 2 library positions at the new Stetson Library during this next coming fiscal year. That is a promise that we have been voting on for at least the last 4 years. As this board has been working together with the community, with government, with everyone to bring the Q House forward, we're finally here. The Q House is expected to be open as of the 1st of April, 2021. And with the Q House opening, that means the new Stetson Library will open also. And because the library is going to go from a 1-level library to a 2-story library, those 2 positions are definitely needed, as described by our former city librarian, Martha Rogan. And so that is the reason why I am strongly asking this committee to vote in favor of the amendment concerning the library positions. The other $40,000 that I've identified for the library system, as we know, there was $100,000 cut from the library's ability to purchase books and to purchase technical, websites and things of that sort. And there was about $40,000 that spoke to books, 20,000 specifically children's books. As we all know, that this is a very tight budget year. However, with, again, the Stetson Library coming online and the fact that children are distance learning and things of that sort, I thought that it was befitting to ask that at least the $40,000 for the purchasing of books for the system would be added. And so I also ask everyone to support that piece of the amendment. And thirdly, in regards to the city town clerk position, I ask that you guys support that, because this board has been a part of the process over the last approximately 4 years. We knew about the change in personnel from the city clerk's office to the CSO's office, and that was a temporary agreement. And then that agreement, as the city clerk had come to us to explain, he was asked if that agreement could continue a little longer. And now that the person has retired, the clerk's office really needs that position back. And that person had been in that position for like 30 years, and they were at a very high level as far as pay is concerned. And so what we are asking through this amendment is to reinstate the position, bring it back to the city clerk's office, but start it at a step 1. And so the department or the city is saving money in regards to, because that person retired, and they're going to start all over. And so again, we made a pledge to say that we heard and we understood that this position was expected to come back. And so I'm asking for your support in that. And I believe that is it as far as my amendments. And so I thank you all. I hope that you take into consideration the need of these three asks that I have outlined. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alder Morrison. Alder Marchand, who's next on the queue? I lost my sound there for a minute, so I'm not sure.
I will say in a moment. I'm neglected to make an announcement if I could, Madam Chair, which is it's helpful for colleagues also to clarify if you're in favor of the item. And of course, Alder Morrison made very clear that she's in favor of the parts of the item that she presented and spoke on them very well. But is it right, Madam Alder Morrison, that you're in favor of the whole amendment that's before us?
Yes, yes. So I'm sorry if I messed that up.
No, I didn't give that instruction, but it's a
Right.
useful thing in deliberations. So we thank you for your your words, Alder Morrison. It's helpful in deliberations if folks would start off their remarks by saying, I speak in favor of the amendment, or I speak against the amendment.
Against, yeah.
I'm 100% in support of the amendment.
Thank you. So, Madam Chair, we have two more colleagues on the queue for the moment, but I expect more will come. Next is Alder Festa.
Go ahead, Alder Festa.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. First of all, I appreciate these amendments. I know that we all worked hard on them, whether on the committee or not. I do have some questions for clarification, and I appreciate Alder Morrison explaining some of those. Of course, restoring the library acquisitions is important because what are libraries without books? And I wish we could reinstate the whole 100,000, and I hope through donations maybe we can make up the rest. My question is actually in regard to the Stetson Library positions. And Madam Chair, may I ask these questions directly to Alder Morrison, who might be able to answer them for clarification purposes through you?
Go ahead. If Alder Morrison can answer them. Are you any objections to that, Alder Morrison?
Oh, I have no objection at all.
Go right ahead, Alder Festa.
Great, thank you. You mentioned, Alder Morrison, you mentioned that the library is opening on 4/2021 with the Q House.
Right.
And I'm in favor of these positions because obviously you need staff to run them. But I'm wondering if it would make sense to dollar these positions out and possibly propose them for the next budget cycle and maybe put those fundings, elsewhere. But, I'm just wondering, what the procedure is. Have the jobs even been listed? When do they plan on posting these positions? And if it's something that can maybe wait just because of the challenges we're facing this year, can it wait for the next budget cycle and just dollar them out?
So no, we have been waiting to fill these positions for well over 4 years. These positions are needed because actually the Q House building is expected really to be done really by the winter, the end of the winter, say February, March. And so we're going to need these positions. There's no reason for the library system to put out an announcement for positions that they don't know that they're going to get the funding, especially when the mayor took the positions out. And so now that we are at this point, and hopefully this committee and the full board can support these amendments, but we need those positions now. And so we've been dollaring this to death for a long time. So now we need to pay.
And I guess I should just clarify that I am not opposed to these positions. I am just looking to see if it can wait for the next budget cycle, considering that, 2021, April 2021. So I'm assuming that if this passes, that the advertising to fill the positions will begin, and will their start date be in April of 2021, or is the intent to start them sooner?
it is my belief the intent is to start them as soon as they can hire. It's not, one of the things we have to always remember, there's not a big selection out there of librarians. And so that process can take a while, which the process took us a while to get our former librarian when we had an opening. And so, that was our city one, but the process in itself takes quite a bit of time. So those positions will be filled. Those positions, those people have to get trained, and there's going to be a lot that comes with it. Not only will they be a librarian, but at the same time, looking at the size at that library. Stetson has always been a very, very small library, and so that's the size is going to bring a lot of different things. And so, yeah, those, as soon as this budget is passed, the library system will begin to find those 2 new librarians for Stetson, because this building, as you know, is 2 stories.
Yes, that I remember from previous discussions about the Q house and the design. So, okay, I appreciate that. And I guess I was just looking to see if we would be able to hold off on those positions until the next budget cycle and maybe use those funds to possibly decrease the, put it in the tax reduction. But I appreciate your clarifications and your answers. They were very helpful. Thank you for that. Madam Chair, may I make a point of order?
Explain.
So seeing that a lot of the expenditure increases have names by them, would it make sense for each one to explain their amendments so we could get clarification on them and then ask any appropriate questions if they exist?
Fine. I would, Madam Chair, I think if Alder Festa would like to yield the floor and reserve
Right.
her opportunity for later to ask further questions, we can certainly encourage Alders Furlow and DeCola to get on the queue to speak about the items that they brought forward, whatever else they would like to add beyond the initial description.
Right.
Alder Festa, would you like to be on the queue later on?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Okay, so then all at this point, Alder DeCola, did you want to speak on your items that you brought forward?
Sure. With item trade expense fund in a controlled account, yes. With the after 9/11, and security costs have risen a lot faster than the capability of fundraising, and it's put a lot of stress on a lot of events. And now with mandated rules by the federal government, how things are supposed to be policed, this is, I put in there to be there, that if the events cannot fund the security part, that they will come to us to show that they made every effort to raise money and try their best. And this way we can then have the security of the police department and fire, whatever departments come in to explain their costs. So every event is getting a fair representation from each department. And this way, if things don't happen because of the virus, the corona, these funds can then be moved to whatever's needed. And I'm in favor of this. So this is to help everybody, just not one individual. It's something needed, because I did not like hearing the administration saying that they were going to refuse organizations because they could not afford to pay their bill. And I don't feel that we should be the heavy arm. We are part of the city. We are here to represent our families and friends of New Haven. So that is on that item. The rate increase for building fees over 10,000 square feet. With this great program that New Haven has of 2 years freezing property taxes and then a 5-year phase in on all these major projects, I did not want, as Alder Manshard mentioned, the mom and pops, people redoing their house renovation. This is for big developers who come in there and get all these tax breaks. And this is a way of us, as residents have asked us, how can we generate more revenue? So this is one way of generating revenue without burdening the homeowner, our taxpayers. It's some way of assisting them. The number I calculated was like a 2% figuring to what was coming in the next year. It could be more, but I don't think it'll be below that. And the environment that we have made for developers, the healthy environment that will continue to happen in New Haven. So I'm in favor of this one too. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder DeCola. All righty, Alder Furlow. Did you want to speak on your amendment, sir?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to my colleague for asking for further detail. So as it was already mentioned by our Vice Chair, this is simply a line to assist our residents. We have literally thousands of trees in the city of New Haven that have been marked for removal, which have not been removed. And consequently, these trees have fallen, causing property damage, which is extremely difficult for residents to litigate through Corp Counsel. And so my amendment is to create a line that will make the process easier for our residents to be able to submit their claims and to be heard. Concurrently, Corp Counsel denies 99% of claims that come through without a fight from the alders. Stepping up and battling on their behalf. The only source that they have is to go to court and file more fees. I've looked at the average or the highest amount of tree damage and the lowest amount. And so if this is passed, which I hope for your support for, then we will get together and we will write an amendment on the process of how this will be handled moving forward. And I do support this amendment. I did talk to my colleague. I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I can't think of the numbers now, so I'll just call the colleague by name. Please forgive me. Alder Festa. And so if she does have, I know she had an additional amendment. And so I am willing to accept a friendly amendment to the dollar amount that I am proposing. And that's it for now. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay,
Madam
all
Chair.
right. Yes, Alder.
This amendment is my amendment, so any amendment that would be friendly, I would have to decide if it's friendly or not.
Yes, sir. So noted. Okay. Any other discussion from the makers of the amendment? All right. So now, at this point, Alder Festa, you've heard clarity from the makers of these amendments. Now, do you want to come back on the queue to start your conversation?
Sure, Madam Chair. Yes, thank you. As long
Okay.
as there's no one else that has comments to make on those amendments, I do have some questions. In regard to the parade, parade expense fund in controller account for the amount of $150,000. I'm just wondering if there are guidelines that have been put into place as to what constitutes a parade. For example, a mile long, 2 miles, 5 miles, whatever. And if those guidelines have been set up, we need to probably know what they are to make sure that these funds are also fairly distributed when the ask comes. I also have concerns because in the police budget, there is a line item events for the amount of $550K. And I want to make sure that we are not overstepping our boundaries or over budgeting this line item. But, I just want to make sure we dot our i's, cross our t's before we pass these amendments to avoid possible future litigation, if presenters are not presenting everything that we set up, if that makes any sense.
Alder Festa, are you asking Alder DeCola through the chair?
Yeah, Madam Chair, if through you, Alder DeCola can answer these, I would appreciate it.
Alder DeCola, are you able to give Alder Festa an answer at this point? I would think if it's not passed it, nothing is formally set up, but let you talk. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, we're working on making rules for this and to identify how to apply and everything. I was with Mike Gormley today talking about it and how we're going to have to word this. It's until it's voted on, but we are working on it. There has to be guidelines. It's just not anything. It's for major parades. If I have to use names, St. Patrick's Day Parade, Freddie Fixer Parade. And if there's something else that happens every once in a while, I think the Puerto Rican Day comes in. So these are things that we need to assist. The police fund, yes, those funds are always gobbled up into their overtime. It is never used correctly for events. I just truly believe that the police department does not justly use their funds for the representative of our city residents for events. It's never enough. And what bothers me is when they try to tell them that we will not issue you a permit and that they're stuck. And that is not right to New Haven residents. And I'm very adamant about this. We are making guidelines. They have to come back to the board. These funds cannot be released without our approval. And I will get the ruling on it and the details when the time comes.
I'm still concerned though about the line item in the police budget for 550 because it's broken out for events and we didn't discuss possibly eliminating that and replacing it with this or making some adjustments for the finances with it. So I completely understand where you're coming from because we do end up paying quite a fair share on these other events that may or may not be covered under that police budget of 550,000. But I guess
Alder
this,
Festa,
yes.
I think if you have the ability to make an amendment about the police overtime budget, so you might want to think about that. I think we should, if you have other questions and clarifications of people who contributed to the amendment, you should ask them. But I think at some point you got to move on to where do you stand on the amendment and are there any changes that you would offer?
Well, right now, there's still, I think, a lot of unanswered questions. Where did this amount come from? Was there anything that led to the 150,000? What have we paid in the past, I guess, from five? There just seems to be still some unanswered questions that need to be addressed before I can put my full 100% support behind it. And it just seems like we would need the police back in front of us because we can't decide.
So Alder Festa, if you would ask Alder, if you have additional points of information to ask of Alder DeCola, please list them. You, of course, have the right to follow up through the chair with the police department before the second reading, but they are not here tonight. And we can't wait, I'm making a point of order on the vice chair. We can't have a discussion where we just start offering every thought we have. We have to have a structure and an order. And so if you have a point of information for Alder DeCola and you're not finished with it, please list all of them in their entirety. And if you don't like the answer, then you can decide to vote against it or make an amendment. But we're not going to spend deliberations just kind of publicly wondering about things. We need to be disciplined. So I ask you, please follow.
Get a point of clarification then from you, Mr. Vice Chair. We're voting on this entire piece of paper that you presented, correct?
That is what has been moved and seconded. Yes,
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Festa.
So I may not be ready to vote on this item tonight until I get some of these answers. So if I do vote, against it, that will probably change in 2 weeks once some of these questions are addressed and clarified. So I want, folks to understand that, because some of these amendments were also my ideas, and I don't want to vote against myself, but there's also, keep in mind too, this document didn't come to us until today, early afternoon, and it's a lot to digest and a lot of questions that come forward. And I just want the committee to understand that if I vote against it, that could change on the floor in 2 weeks.
That's fine.
question-
And so after you've completed your questions to get information, I think you are free during the discussion to say something to the effect that there's much about this amendment I like, but there are some things that I still have questions about. I'm not prepared to vote yes on the amendment at this time, but I might change my mind based on subsequent information. That is a very succinct way for you to make your intentions clear. So I would ask you now, if you have further questions on particular aspects of this amendment that you would pose to those who are involved in making it, please list those now.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I do have additional in regard to the, also the tree litigation settlement fund. And I did speak with my colleague, Majority Leader, and we discussed this somewhat, but there's still additional questions as to what led, to the $100,000, as well as was Corporation Counsel involved in this discussion? What did we spend? What have we spent in litigation on these types of items that were mentioned, where tree falls, damages property, someone files a complaint? How many have been settled? How many have been denied? What is the amount of the settlements that have been presented? Where does Corporation Counsel stand with this? That type of, again, I want to make sure our I's are dotted, T's are crossed. How much have, I may have said this already, and I apologize if I'm being redundant, but how much have we paid out, as well as how much from self-insurance have we paid out for tree claims? Because that will have also an effect on our self-insurance. So if any, if Madam Chair, through you, if we could get those clarifying questions, it would be appreciated.
So noted. All right, Alder Marchand. So we're on the amendment in front of us. Where do you stand, Alder Festa?
On
You need your clarity on all of the things you've mentioned. So I take it that means you will not be voting on the amendment.
well, I think I made that point
Yeah. Okay.
earlier.
All righty. Alder Marchand, this is your amendment. Are there any other discussion on Alder Marchand's amendment?
Madam
Oh,
Chair,
Madam Chair, point
Yes,
of
ma'am.
order. I
Uh-huh.
was asking through you if
Mhm.
if there were questions, if those questions can be answered through the majority.
Right, you're not gonna get those answers tonight, though, is what you realize. So we are gonna have to work to help you to get those answers within the next 2 weeks. Yes.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification. I do have additional questions, if I may.
quick
Before
point
you
of-
continue, yes, go ahead, sir.
Because
If-
you want us to question this
Alder
amendment
Festa, I was
as
in
a
the middle of
whole.
making a point of order, which
Oh,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, I didn't hear
in
you.
your favor, but I
Mhm.
need you to, I've been called on, so
Uh-huh.
please, one moment.
Right,
Which-
go ahead, Alder Marchand.
Two things. One, I would recognize Alder Kimberly Edwards who has joined us.
Yes, good evening, Alder Edwards.
If Alder Furlow has anything further to offer to the questions that Alder Festa has posed, he can take that opportunity now. He can also tell us that he doesn't have anything to offer at this point, and it will be follow-up.
Well, I don't have thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I don't have the dollar figures. But I had, through our conversation, just so that we're not dragging this portion on, we will discuss this moving forward. If we can get a list of all the questions, I will make sure that they're answered appropriately. Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Alder Furlow. Back to you, Alder Hamilton. I believe Alder Festa has additional questions.
Okay, go ahead, Alder Fester.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, once again, and thank you, Majority Leader. I appreciate that. Regarding the, hold on, I'm looking at the NPIP. There was the, permit fees. Hold on, I wrote some questions down. It was mentioned that it was based the 400, is that right? The 400,000? My
Yes.
eyesight.
Yes.
Okay, the 400,000 is based on 2% of, basically on what? I'm confused as to what that 2% is based on, as well as, the 10,000 square foot. I don't know if this exists in the city of New Haven, but if someone has a 10,000 square foot house and they're already paying taxes on that house, how will that affect them with this increase in permits if they're having work done? That's just a concern. I mean, I don't know.
Alder Festa, is your question really focused on how Alder DeCola came up with the $400,000 figure?
Yes.
All right, well, let's
Where
pose
that
the question in a clean, concise way. Alder DeCola, do you have?
I think I did.
A question related to that?
Yes, I took the projected permit fees that Jim Terzio projected and was looked at the projects, and I just lowballed it at 2%, and that's where I came up with the 400,000. And it's a number that residents have been asking us to generate revenue. And Fessa, you were one of them that kept saying we need to get revenue. So I'm doing what you asked. So I'm trying to get revenue here. And I don't understand what's the problem. It's the big
I don't
taxpayer.
have a problem, Alder DeCola. I'm
You're
questioning
making
the process.
an issue that you're having a problem with me trying to raise.
Has the floor.
Folks, one at a time. Go ahead, Alder DeCola. You're explaining yourself. Go ahead, finish
Right.
up.
Monday night, a lot of residents were saying we need to raise revenue. So that's what we're doing. And I'm just trying to figure out what you're looking for. It's not going to be taxing the homeowner. It's the project. When they put the permit in, they pick a number of square footage of the job. Doesn't mean the whole house, 10,000 is going to get done. It's the job. The job has a square footage. If you go to city plan meetings, you will hear how they explain it into detail and how the square footage and everything leveled out. The grounds, the building, air conditioning, it's everything. I'm trying to do what you asked and many of our colleagues, raise revenue. So I can't figure out what's the problem here.
Thank you,
Are
Alder.
you finished?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alder Festa, more questions.
Yes, I didn't mean to offend you, Alder DeCola. I'm asking questions that I think that are very relevant to how we develop a process. Again, these are, I think, valid. Yes, I don't disagree that we need to increase revenue, no doubt about it, but we need to be careful where we increase the revenue in order to avoid losing any businesses from coming in. Will this discourage a developer from coming in? Will they not build at all? And I don't, want to hear that they won't go build in another city or town, but it's just asking for clarity and full transparency on the process of where these numbers come from.
There,
I'm sorry, was someone speaking?
yes, I was speaking, which is to say,
You're really soft. You need to speak up.
well, thank you, Alder. I'm trying to, Madam Chair and I have a goal, which is to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to ask their questions and to express their viewpoints. But we also have to proceed in an effective and efficient way. And so if you have questions of folks who contributed to the amendment, we would ask you to ask those questions succinctly, hear the response, and then obviously if it doesn't answer your question or to your satisfaction, you can, in your explanation of your vote, you can express your remaining reservations. But we do need to move forward. So do you have additional questions regarding those who contributed to this amendment?
Yes, Mr. Vice Chair, I do, and thank you for that. I guess the questions are, what projects would we collect from? Are there any projects that would be grandfathered in? When would this start? There are projects in the backfill that have presented in city plan. I guess it's guidelines. Again, what are we basing all of this on in regard to a developer? Does it, we're providing a service when we increase these permit fees. So what are does it cost more, to do inspections? We have to make sure that we cover everything as far as who will this affect.
I think you've offered us, Alder Festa, a good bundle of very granular questions that we really ought to take as a follow-up in consultation with city staff and bring back those responses through the chair, of course, in the lead up to the second reading. Are there other components of the amendment package where you have questions, Madam Alder Festa?
I'm looking now. I just want to make sure I covered everything that was of concern. Oh, just one other item, which is the 2.5 million revenue initiative line for Yale. I guess what happens if that doesn't happen?
Well, that's an excellent question, Alder Festa. It would be a deficit that we would have to make up for in some other way. So there's risk in putting an item in the budget revenue that's not definitely agreed to. And so that would be a project for us and our partners to engage with Yale and the other major entities and make the case that they need to increase their contribution, increase their investment in the city, but it's not guaranteed. But the sense that I got from the public and the sense that I got from colleagues was it was important at this point in time to make a very clear statement of intent and to make the very clear case that this is a necessary increase and not something that we simply wish for, but something that we actually really
Need.
And, I get what led to this number? Was it talks with Yale?
No,
Is it
it was-
numbers that you've been
was simply-
discussing?
No, it was simply looking at over the recent years, what has been the order of magnitude of increase that we've been able to agree to with Yale in recent years. And that is definitely the ballpark figure. Many folks said it could be 12, it could be $50 million. And wouldn't that be wonderful? But if we look at in recent years, when the university has increased its contribution, or when the hospital has increased its contribution, 2.5 million seemed like very much the ballpark in line with recent history. And so it's a judgment call.
And you're comfortable with that number?
Nope. It makes me very uncomfortable, but I'm confident, but not comfortable, Alder Festa.
Okay. Okay, I will yield. If I think of other things that I may have missed, I will yield to my colleagues. So I appreciate everyone's time and attention. It's
And
an
of course,
important matter. Thank you.
Alder Festa, you still have the opportunity before we vote on this particular amendment to say how you feel about voting, although I think you've already indicated to us that you have reservations and you don't feel comfortable voting yes until those reservations are assuaged.
Answer, yes.
So if, you don't have to say that because we've already heard you say that unless you want to add to that. Okay, Alder Festa?
Yes. Thank you,
Alder
Alder Marshall.
is next on the queue.
Who's next on the queue?
Alder Hertz.
Alder Hurt, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I raised my hand in support of this amendment. I work with a great group of alders and I have enjoyed my time on the Finance Committee, and it's been a struggle, but we pulled through this and we've made a lot of hard decisions, and I really want to take my hat off to the Finance Committee. Thank you, Madam Chair. New Haven is truly a great city. Even during this time of pandemic, when I am facing my own struggles and the struggles of others in the community, we're facing homelessness, food insecurity, and resource stretching thin. The city in which I live gives me hope that there is a better day coming. Our mayor has proposed an increase of 1.53 mills, and working together on the Finance Committee, we have gotten it down to 0.75, essentially cutting the mill rate increase in half. Even though we will see a tax increase, it is significantly less than what we currently propose. That is important to me and my community because Ward 3, as you know, have many residents who are single, working class homeowners or retired homeowners, many of whom are widowed or single, as well as living on fixed incomes. I want to encourage our city partners. Now, that's important to me. Our city partners, Yale University, Yale New Haven Hospital, to step up and invest more into our city. Ward 3, being in the shadows of the hospital, is asking that they be a good neighbor to the community that they are very much a part of. Let's grow together. I urge all my colleagues to vote in support of this amendment. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Alder Hurt. Who else is on the queue for discussion on the amendments, please?
Madam Chair, I see Alder Walker Myers and Alder Decker on the queue.
Okay, Alder Walker Myers, you first and then Alder Decker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I stand in full support of this amendment, and I'm going to try to hit all of the points. But one important piece of information why I stand in favor of this amendment is because it was done with a collective group. The leadership of the Finance Committee tried to incorporate everyone's ideas, and I think that's really important. I think they took into consideration that we have a constituency that is struggling. We have an entity that can do more, and we're asking everybody to sacrifice. And it's really not fair that we always talk about shared sacrifice without it actually being shared. So I think that's really important. I think whenever you have a budget, it should actually reflect the values that you ran on when you were trying to be elected. And not just this committee, but the board has always stuck to their values and tried really hard. So that's really important. During a time of a pandemic, everyone rolled up their sleeves. They looked at numbers. They had numerous conversations with city staff, and ultimately they made tough decisions. This is not an easy decision for any of us to say we're gonna have even a little bit of a tax increase. But when you are elected leaders, you are elected to make really tough decisions. And that's what we're doing here today. We paid attention to a lot of the testimony that came from our residents that took their time to join us. And we tried really, really hard to make sure all of those things was reflected. So I hope that everybody support. More information people need, will give. But I want people to really sit back and think. At the end of the day, we are elected to do a job, and that's what we're doing. We're doing our best to keep people working. We're supporting our youth and elderly, and we're actually trying to be fiscally responsible. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Walker Myers. Alder Decker, are you next on the queue, sir?
I believe I am. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Go right ahead.
I too support this amendment. It's a very difficult thing, a very difficult amendment. I will try to keep my thoughts succinct, but I do, in regards to this, the 2.5 million that my colleagues from the 10th and the 25th were discussing. I do want to put that number in a little bit of context, because when we're talking about Yale University, you know, obviously we all know they have a $30 billion endowment. So the endowment's not liquid. We know this. But I do have to point out that Yale has a long-term endowment spending rule of 5.25%. Now, just last year alone, they underspent their own target by $147 million. So 2.5 million is unless I'm really bad at math, 1.7% of, and this is just the amount that they underspent their own targeted spending rule from the endowment. We're not talking about increasing the rule. We're not talking about a major change to their operating revenue. This is the target they say that they are trying to hit in terms of spending from the endowment. And this 2.5 million would be less than 2% of that gap. Anywho, you know, I echo my colleague, President Walker Myers' frustration with the rhetoric of shared sacrifice when sacrifice is not actually shared. I have a lot of frustration with the rhetoric of austerity, which reigns supreme, you know, in this country right now. And I feel like, you know, institutions with a lot of money and power are constantly saying that there's not enough to go around, but they're saying that in a context in which we are living right now. Here in New Haven, we are in one of the most economically unequal regions in one of the most economically unequal countries in the world. And I've sat here, you know, for years now, but in particular this year, hearing hundreds and hundreds of our residents saying, you know, many people saying, actually, you know, we're up for some sacrifice. We understand that there's a real revenue crisis here in the city, but our large institutions need to do more. You know, Yale needs to do more. The hospital, you know, our large, wealthy, particularly the nonprofit institutions need to do more. So in spite of all of that, I am proud that this budget manages to protect many of our top priorities, the priorities that I ran on. I too, as my colleague from Ward 10 emphasized, based on colleague Morrison's amendments around the library, I'm very happy that we were able to, you know, preserve some funding for those. It's a budget where we're defending a lot of our priorities as a board, and that's great. But what is also clear from this budget is that, like, we're right up at the limit as a city of you know, what we can do if these institutions don't contribute more. I mean, as a city, we can't do something like pass redistributive tax policy the way the federal government and to a lesser extent the state can, right? I mean, if we pass a higher mill rate increase, that tax increase falls on our working families. There's no way to target it to those who make more or who have more wealth as a city. We don't have that option. So, you know, what can we do? I think that this budget with the amendments that Vice Chair Marchand has laid out is the best compromise that we can come up with in this moment. And I do support it. And there are parts of it that I'm very proud of, but I also do want to be clear that a lot of families in this city are going to feel pain from it in the middle of a pandemic. And I just, you know, I have to say our partners in the city okay with that or not. So in spite of all of that, I do again want to emphasize that I plan to vote in favor. And thank you for giving me the floor, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir. Any other colleague that would like to
Madam
speak?
Chair, I saw Alder Evelyn Rodriguez. Her hand was raised.
Okay, Alder Evelyn, your turn, ma'am.
Yes, thank you, Madam President.
Chair.
First of all, I'd like to acknowledge, sorry. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge all of my finance committee colleagues. There's been a lot of work put into this amendment that our vice chair has been able to nicely put together. New Haven. No, I just want to share something very personal. I asked my father at the time, why did he come and live in New Haven? And there's a story behind this. His sisters would walk miles to get to school, and their legs would get in between the brooks, and it was very difficult, but they went to school. He was a farmer in Puerto Rico, and when he came and migrated, he said, when he saw the name New Haven, he understood it in Spanish as Nuevo Cielo, new heaven, a new heaven. So he said, how is that place? But nonetheless, through the migrant program, when he came to work in the farms and he was able to move and live in New Haven, he realized at the time when he moved to New Haven, it really was a heaven. 24/7, the doors were open. There was no concerns of robbery, no theft, no such crime like we have seen in New Haven in past years. Why do I bring this story? Because, and of course, he said, when I saw that name and I saw how nice it was to live on Arch Street, he realized he chose the correct city to live. And he said, this is the city. This is a city with a beautiful name, New Heaven. And I would bring that name back today. New Haven has become the heaven of the greater New Haven and surrounding cities, because this is where the people who are very sick come. We have a lot of scholars. We have expertise in New Haven. We have tremendous businesses and academic schools. We're always working. The Board of Alders, all of the colleagues, they're very conscientious. Like, look at how our Alder Festa is so passionate about what she is saying. So we really care about what's happening. And it's a sad thing that we have to fight and we have to fuss about the sense when we have such great institutes, and which, for example, Yale, New Haven High, this is nothing what we're asking them for. So I want to bring to the fact that that revenue initiative line needs to exist. And if Yale were never to give us a cent, that they should have consciousness that that line is there because the people of the city of New Haven felt that they had a greater responsibility to help. New Haven is where people are coming to receive care, love, and attendance, tender love and care. And we're not saying no, we're accepting them. New Haven is where the rich are coming to invest. We have the privilege of having all modes of transportation. Our departments are working very hard, and it's a sad thing that we have to cut from our departments because our institutes that have such great value and that we have invested in, that the residents have invested in, that we have to constantly push to strive what they themselves state and say. They say we invest. Well, you know what? We're speaking the same language. The residents are speaking the same language. They invest, they pay their taxes. Imagine what happens if they don't pay their taxes.
Alder Rodriguez.
Okay, to end this, and I thank you very much for your patience. I'm asking that line, and I know it's only 2.5, but it should be more than that. I am in support of this amendment. There's been a lot of work done. And even though we may not see everything that we would like to see, I believe that we have worked diligently to get the budget, the mayor's proposed budget, to what we can honestly work with. Thank you, Madam Chair, and everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Evelyn Rodriguez. Are there
Madam
any other
I saw Alder Richard Furlow's hand go up.
Okay, Alder Furlow, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't have really quite an opportunity to express my support of this amendment, as my first round was just in answering questions. I am going to say I am disappointed that the questions came at the last minute when I had various discussions about this by phone, but be it as it may, this took a lot of work. Our city is crying for relief in the midst of a pandemic. Our seniors need assistance. So I think that this budget that is that we are presenting represents what we've heard from our public hearings: a cut in spending, put something in a reserve, and to also give some relief by lowering the mill rate from what was originally proposed. And so I am happy to support this amendment and going to the full board. And then this is where we've gone through this first hurdle of getting the amendment together. And now we're going forward to the second work that we have, and that's getting our full board to support this. And so again, I am in full support of this amendment and thank this committee for so diligently working with all of your ideas, and our vice chair for making sure that every voice was represented in some way. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you.
All righty. Alder Marchand, are there any other hands, any other committee member that would like? I didn't say my piece, but I'm waiting to see if anyone else.
You get to have the last word, Madam Chair. I see two hands from alders who've gone already, and so I wanted to just, and we'll call on them. That's Alder DeCola and Alder Festa. I just wanted to see if there's anybody from the committee who has not yet spoken who wishes to speak. Of course, we can reserve the last word for you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
And I don't believe
Thank
we
you.
do, so perhaps we can go with Alder DeCola and Alder Festa.
Go ahead. Alder DeCola, you want to start?
Yes, thank you. Yes, I was answering the question and I just simply forgot to say that I am full support of this amendment. We worked very hard. We listened to many residents, colleagues. This is a team effort. We have to live with this environment right now. It's constantly moving, changing. We don't know what the roads will be going forward. We might have to come back. Who knows? We have to adjust things with this pandemic. But I am and enjoyed little dialogue, conversations, and support from my colleagues in moving forward. So I am full support of this. Thank you.
Alder Festa, you're next, ma'am.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to get on again. You know, and as I mentioned earlier, this was truly a collective document put together by many of the members of the committee and others on the Board of Alders. And I can't tell you how grateful I am regarding that. My questioning tonight was not to offend anyone or to question their abilities. It is to get a better understanding to make sure that we are on the right track. You know, this is our city. We're in a pandemic. We've never been there before, unless we were born in the early 1900s. But I just want to make it clear. I just want to make sure that the questions I addressed are answered to be sure that we move forward together with a common ground, to make sure that all our I's are dotted, T's are crossed. And that's it. I appreciate this committee so much because I know the amount of work that we all put in, the long hours, staying up. You know, we were talking earlier, we had very little sleep. We're all passionate about our beautiful city. I'm sorry.
Take your time.
Take a moment. You okay?
I'm fine. I'm an emotional wreck
I
with so
know.
many things going on.
Yes, you've told me.
Okay, take your time.
Well,
You know, we have to also remember the 11% tax. I know you don't want to hear this. The 11% tax increase that we experienced not long ago. And for me to support a tax increase is really, really hard. And I want to see all these funds to go down to bring it to a 0 mill rate increase. That would be my goal. And that is to protect the most vulnerable of this city. I'm concerned about the folks that are who just bought a home that may not be able to maybe pay a bill, or the folks that are renters that the tax increase may impact as well. We're in such difficult times that I'm worried about them. I have a roof over my head. God has blessed me with a roof over my head. But you know how many people out there that a tax increase or even that 11% increase did damage to? You know, again, I can't, I will be voting on this amendment, but not tonight. We have so many, there's just too many unanswered questions that still need to be questioned. And maybe it's just the way my brain works. And I just, you know, I don't expect anyone to get into my head to figure it out for me, just like I don't want to enter your brain and figure out your methods, but these are mine. And, you know, it wasn't meant to question my colleagues on a negative level. It's to question my colleagues on a clarification level to make sure that the partnership that we're all talking about, which entails the residents, our city departments, the administration, as well as, you know, I'll label it as other, you know, that were mentioned by other colleagues. But let's just, you know, continue to work together, because I really truly appreciated working together on this piece of document. You know, and unfortunately, sometimes when you get a document with only a couple of hours to really digest it, you develop questions. And even though I did have some dialogue with some of my colleagues, it wasn't enough time to continue that dialogue. And that's all this is. So please understand that. And again, this is our city. We are all passionate about our city. We love our city, or we wouldn't be sitting in these seats if we weren't. And I think our goals are all the same. So I thank you for the time.
Thank you, Alder.
All righty, thank you.
Alder Hamilton, you have the last word on this amendment and the amendment only.
Thank you, Vice Chair Marchand. First, let me say, this has not been easy. This has been a very difficult task for all of us, especially this Finance Committee. However, for me personally, why I support these amendments, 1, 2, and 4, because first of all, in all the public hearings we heard from our residents, for me, It's about the people, okay? I look at myself as a poor person in this community that's just trying to survive. I'm retired now and I'm on a fixed income too, right? So a tax increase from me is very difficult, but I still want the services that are needed to keep our city going for all our residents, myself included. Our committee, we work very hard, right, to take responsibility of the needs of our residents as first priority. We work very hard. We have made some difficult decisions. And yes, you know what? I am in support of that $2.5 million line because at the end of the day, yes, we're in this together. And our partners like Yale University and Yale New Haven Hospital, yes, they need to step up and do more. We're asking our residents to step up and pay more taxes, okay? So Yale and the big partners, the big entities in this community, they need to do their part as well, right? I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound like a preacher, but I'm preaching because you know what? Yes, we have to stand up for our people, the residents of this community, and we can't expect them to foot the tax burden by themselves as we've been doing. It's not fair. So yes, I'm supporting this amendment in all aspects. And I ask every member of the Board of Alders who are on the Finance Committee, and when it does go to the full board, to support this. Thank you so much, Alder Marsha.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I don't see any further hands of committee members, so I believe we can take a vote on the amendment only by calling the roll.
Okay. Yvette Hamilton is in favor of the amendment. Yes. Adam Marchand, in favor. Are you in favor of?
Yes.
Thank you. Ernie Santiago is not in the meeting. So Alder DeCola, are you in favor of the amendment, sir?
Yes.
Alder Morrison?
Yes.
Alder Walker Myers?
Yes.
Alder Festa?
No.
Alder Richard Furlow?
Yes.
Alder Evelyn Rodriguez?
Yes.
Alder Ron Hurt?
Yes.
And Alder Charles Decker? Alder Decker?
Yes. Pardon me,
Okay.
My mute key got stuck. Yes.
No problem. All right, so we are in favor of the item as amended. Now back to the item as amendment. I see your hand, Alder Marchand. Go right ahead, sir.
Yes, Madam Chair. I'm actually offering 2 additional amendments. And I have to admit that this is not part of a package that has been fully discussed, but I'll tell you where they came from. So, Madam Chair, I move an additional amendment.
And okay, what is that amendment?
You need to ask for a second, Madam Chair.
Second, pardon me. Second, Alder DeCola, I see your hand seconding, and I see go ahead. You're seconded. Go ahead. The
Thank
item
you,
has been
Madam Chair.
moving second.
Thank you. So it's actually another item from the city's technical amendment that did not make it into my presentation. I left it out by mistake because it was, it didn't have a fiscal impact that went with it. But it is something that I'm in favor of. And it's in regards to license permits and fees. Obviously that's item number 4, item number 4.
Right. Yes.
And it's the part of the budget that talks about the city plan commission, the city plan department and the fees that they charge. And they're looking to create a fee for applicants for a special permit. And they're at, the new fee is $350. They don't have an estimate for how it could affect cities' income. So I'm not offering any additional revenue as part of this amendment. Is just simply to change the fee structure for that item. So that's the first part of my amendment. The second part of my amendment, which came from Alder Festa, is item, it's amending or appropriating ordinance number 4. It's a change to change the language about the tax anticipation notes. Currently, the language allows the city staff to issue an amount not to exceed $50 million in tax anticipation notes. The amendment would increase that to $100 million. And the reason why I agreed with that is because I talked with the city staff, Mr. Gormany in particular, and although he feels pretty confident about our relative standing and the interest rates are currently quite good for tax anticipation notes, I think affording his department a little more flexibility, affording the city more flexibility in issuing those notes in the event that we face slower than usual tax collections at the beginning of the new fiscal year, including because of the steps we've taken as a board to allow people to pay on different schedules. You know, I think those steps were good and meaningful, but they could create a cash flow situation for us in the beginning of the year. And so given the really positive interest rates, I think it's good to allow the city to have more flexibility in the total dollar value of the tax anticipation notes that it issues to prevent any kind of cash crunch in the fall. So those are the two amendments I would make. One is that creating a $350 fee for people who are applying for a special permit from the city plan department. And 2 is increasing the upper limit of tax anticipation notes from 50 to $100 million. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Alder Festa, I'm sorry, who's that? Alder Furlow. I see your hand, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just as a point of clarification, are we voting on these two together? And if so, is it possible to divide the question?
Alder, Marshawn, do you have an answer?
I have moved them together. If colleagues would prefer I move them separately, I can do that. I'll just have to rescind my present motion and remake it.
Alder Furlow, is there a preference there? Sir? I see your hand, Alder Furlow.
If colleagues are in favor of voting on both items together as one amendment, I have no issue with that, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so Alder Marshawn, you moved them together, so and they were seconded together. Are we okay with them staying together?
Madam Chair, I think we should ask for discussion, and if people bring that up, then we can always change our minds, but let's ask for discussion.
Discussion on the items as amended, please.
As offer, the amendment has made.
The amendment. Do I see any hands? No discussion?
Nope.
All righty, so we are taking a vote on those two items, those two amendments for the to item 4, correct?
It's in one amendment.
Right. Okay, so I'm in favor of the amendment, Alder Marchand.
Yes.
No, Alder DeCola,
Yes.
Alder Morrison,
Yes.
Alder Walker Myers. Did I hear yes? Alder
Yes.
Walker Myers?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Alder Festa,
Yes.
Alder Furlow,
Yes.
Alder Evelyn Rodriguez. Alder Evelyn? Alder Evelyn, are you saying yes? I don't, are you there?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you, ma'am. Thank
Thank
you. Alder Ron Hurd
Yes.
and Alder Charles Decker.
Yes.
Okay. We're in approval of the item as amended. Okay, the floor is yours, Alder Marchand, back to you.
Madam Chair, I have no further amendments, and I could speak about the item as amended, but I defer to any colleagues who might have amendments beyond what has already been moved.
Okay. Are there any other amendments on what has been moved thus far? From anyone? Okay. Seeing no other hands raised, are we at the point now? Go ahead, Alder Marchand. I see your hand.
Madam Chair, I want to thank all of my colleagues on the committee for their hard work during this whole process. I think it was more collaborative than it has been at times, and I think, but it's difficult and it's tense and at times quite uncomfortable. And I don't, when Alder Festa asked me before if I'm comfortable with that particular part of the amendment, I said no, and I think it's fair to say I'm not comfortable at all, because this is a difficult budget. It asks a lot of many people. And I share Alder Decker's sentiment that in America today, it doesn't have to be that way. But rather than talk more about what it should be, I'll just acknowledge that this is what it is. So facing the choices that we have to stick to our values. We have to ask multiple people to step up. We have to protect the core values we stand by, core services, our priorities. And we have to look to the future as well. And so after our vote on the 26th, we need to redouble our efforts to look for the long-term solutions. There's a lot about New Haven that we're really excited about, that we should be excited about. Our future can be bright.
Yes.
But the burden has fallen on too few shoulders. And there are entities in this community whose shoulders are bigger than anybody else's by far.
Yes.
And so the conversation we're having tonight, as difficult as it is just the beginning. There's a conversation that continues after this budget process that we must have. We need a different structure to this relationship with our key partners.
Yes.
Otherwise, our path is not sustainable. But in the meantime, we're asking everybody to step up as best they can. And if we hold true to our values and to each other, we'll get through this. I thank colleagues for their hard work, and I encourage the committee members to vote yes on the items as amended. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All righty. Are there any other discussion from colleagues on these items as amended? Alder Festa, I see your hand.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Just a point of clarification. Is this where, are you taking policy amendments? Or was that just amendments on that item we were just discussing?
It's now or never, Alder Festa.
Is it possible?
In terms of the committee action.
Yes.
Is it possible to submit some policy amendments?
Now's your time, or on the floor on the 26th.
Madam Chair, may
Go
I?
right ahead. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. I do have some policy amendments that I'd like to propose and discuss with the group if at all possible. Starting with the mayor shall renegotiate the fire services agreement with Yale University based upon the university's growth. This was last negotiated in the 90s.
Point of order, Alder Festa, do you want to move them individually, or I think it might be more efficient if you move them all now and we could talk about them together.
Okay,
Right.
I can do that.
So, but why don't you let that first one be the beginning and we'll second it, and then you can elaborate after we second.
Okay.
So now you need to ask for a second, Alder Hamilton.
Is there a second on Alder Festa's first policy amendment? Anyone? Is there a second? Ooh.
I'll second.
Okay, the item has been moved and seconded by Alder Ron Hurd. Discussion, Alder Festa.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. The purpose of this policy amendment is due to the growth of the university with additional colleges and number of students. And although there was an explanation as to how the calculation is done through Mr. Gormany, our finance director, I feel that the amount that was negotiated back in the 90s just needs to be renegotiated, because I'm sure our fire department makes many calls, and it would be nice to be compensated for those calls. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any other discussion from the committee on Alder Fester's technical amendment about renegotiation of the fire service contract with Yale University?
Alder Morrison.
Alder Morrison, I see your hand. Go ahead, ma'am.
Just a point of clarification through you, Madam Chair. I would like to ask Alder Festa a question.
Yeah.
Please.
So in your policy amendment, isn't that the reason why the university pays their voluntary payment? Because those numbers can't really be measured. And so they have their amount that they're paying, but at the same time, this amendment that has been brought forward has put in basically asking the university to pay more, to do more. And so I'm not sure how this policy amendment would really yield us more money, unless you know that the one of the factors in the calculation has doubled, and you can see we're getting a lot more money than we're getting now. I just wanted that clarification.
Yes, thank you for your question. My understanding is that back in the 90s, they had an agreement that that the university would pay just over $3 million for fire service. And I feel that since, this might be also another opportunity for Yale to contribute to the city, considering that we provide them some first responders for their safety.
Okay, well, just one last piece through you, Madam Chair. In regards to, I guess for me, instead of looking at something like this during the budget process, is if you go through your process of gathering all this information and you feel as though that there needs to be a new policy or a new ordinance or something like that, I think that would be the best mode into addressing this particular component, because then we can really look at the dollars and cents to see, is this going to yield us more money? Because I would hate to do something like this and kind of get locked in, because as you see, yes, they back in the 90s, they said $3 million. They've been giving their, whatever it is they've been giving. But if we maybe put them into a corner and say, okay, this is your amount. I don't care if everybody in this city, all 136,000 of us go hungry, they might say, nope, this is the amount. So I just think that, to me, that this might be better vetted through more of a process, more through a communication to the board president, to put that into a committee to really look at it and really outline some things, because we don't want to cut our nose to spite our face.
I thank you for your comments. I appreciate it. I think the goal is to really tie the hands, to say, to make sure that, we hold it down. We need to, yes, I don't disagree. We probably will eventually have to put in a communication to discuss this further. But right now, I think we have an opportunity where we should be asking for additional dollars due to the growth of the university. And it makes sense for us to say, hey, this is another way that you can help us. And it just opens up discussion for the mayor to have with the university based on that one sole item.
Right.
You know, and it could be, you know, an addition, I don't know, based on what they give us, we could add, how about X% more? You know, once we do some form of calculation as to the growth of the university and base it on, you know, so many logistics, land, buildings, etc.
Right. I guess just for me, and this is the last thing that I'll say on it, I think for me, because of process, I just would think that something like this is more, it would be better to vet this out, to really lay out the advantages and disadvantages of doing something such as this, or revisiting something such as this through a committee process. And so thank you for answering my questions, Alder Festa.
Noted.
The chair knows that. So we've had a couple people raise their hands. I don't know, Alder Hamilton, have you seen those hands, or should I point them?
Yeah, maybe you want, I need to help point those out to me,
Alder
please.
Furlow and Alder Decker.
Okay, and who was first?
Alder Furlow, then Alder
Okay.
Decker.
Shit. I mean, excuse me. Go ahead, Alder Furlow, I'm sorry. Alder Furlow, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I won't belabor the committee at this time with a list of questions, but since this is just coming before the committee and there are a lot of questions that I'm sure we can pose, this policy amendment will not have my support.
Alder Decker.
Go ahead, Alder Decker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I, unsurprisingly for my comments, I am in accord with the spirit of the policy amendment. The reason why I will not be voting in favor is because my concern is about, I think given the scale of what Yale needs to do differently, I would be worried about sort of artificially bounding the scope of that discussion or the scope of what they need to do differently at this time. Although again, I recognize the spirit in which the amendment was made. I appreciate that, of course. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, Alder Marchand, go ahead. I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I speak out against this policy amendment. I clearly agree with the overall goal. Look at the amendment we just passed. But I don't think that prescribing the exact method of increasing the contribution is wise. In fact, I think it's counterproductive. I think the current framework that determines the voluntary contributions, one part being the voluntary payment based on fire service, the other being a calculation about the census of faculty and students and so on, I think that framework has not served us well. I don't think it's a question of revising that framework. I think it's something completely different that's going to have to be negotiated and will not be part of a budget policy amendment. It's going to be some creative mechanism that somebody really smart figures out. I don't think it's wise at all. And I don't think the administration should be bound by those kinds of instructions. For that reason, I strongly oppose this amendment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, any other discussion on Alder Fester's amendment, policy amendment? Are there any other hands? Have I missed any?
Nope.
No. All right, so I will take the roll regarding Alder Fester's policy amendment. I'm not in favor of the amendment myself. Alder Marchand?
No.
Alder Ernie Santiago is not in the room. Alder DeCola?
No.
Alder Jeanette Morrison?
No.
Alder Walker Myers?
No.
Alder Festa?
Yes.
Alder Furlow?
No.
Alder Evelyn Rodriguez?
No.
Alder Ron Hurt?
No.
And Alder Charles Decker?
Okay.
One yes, and everyone else, no. The amendment failed.
Madam
Sorry.
Chair,
Yes, ma'am, sir.
may I make a suggestion to our colleague from the 10th Ward?
Go right ahead.
I think it might be helpful if you make a motion to the effect that, Madam Chair, I'd like to make a series of policy amendments. And then if someone seconds that, then you could go through the rest of them all at one time. Does that make sense, Madam Chair? And
Sure.
Alder-
Yes. Alder Fester?
So you just want me to go through them all?
That's
Yes.
my recommendation, Alder Fest.
That's, okay, and that's what I understood from the beginning.
Mhm.
So I just want to make sure that I still understood it properly.
And I
Yes.
think the phrase could be, Madam Chair, I move a series of amendments, period.
Okay. There is one, I know I submitted these to the chair, and the vice chair. There is additional one that I had, that I'll just propose one other, that, I apologize, didn't come across the desk because it was literally a few minutes prior to,
Okay.
us coming on. So, it's,
So Alder Fester, are you saying that you're going to only propose one more policy amendment? or-
I'm just going to propose, yes, one more policy,
Okay,
actually two, I'm sorry, two
Okay.
policy amendments.
so you make a
Um,
motion,
But one of the two is one that I apologize, didn't make it to your desk.
Alder, okay, thank you. But I think before we can discuss it and you can even describe it, you have to use the words, I move to policy amendments.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify. I'm
But you have
getting
to
there.
You have to make the motion first before you clarify.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I have two amendments that I would like to move.
Okay. And they are?
Whether-
And they are,
No, no,
Move,
ask for a second.
no, move, who's the second? Is there a second? I don't see any hands. No second,
The motion fails.
sorry. All
So-
right,
We're back to the item as amended. Do you want to ask for further discussion, Madam Chair, before we vote?
yeah, are there any other discussions? Okay, I'm not in favor of the policy amendments. Alder Marchand,
Madam Chair, we already voted on the policy amendments. Now we're voting on the item as amended.
as amended, I'm sorry, I'm getting tired.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, the vote is on the items as amended. No, for me. Alder Marchand,
Point of order, Madam Chair.
yes.
Let us, I think it might help for a moment, if I may, just to remind us exactly what we're voting on, okay?
Right,
Because I think that might affect your vote. We are now voting on items 1, 2, and 4 as amended.
oh, okay.
So why
That's
don't you
definitely not what I'm voting on, I can see.
Perhaps
all
you
right.
might want to reformulate your statement.
Yes, okay. So at this point, we are back to, we are voting on items 1, 2, and 4 as amended.
Yes.
Yes, I'm in favor of items 1, 2, and 4 as amended. Yes, for me. Okay, Alder Marchand.
Yes.
All righty, Alder Ernest Santiago is not on the call. Alder Sal DeCola,
Yes.
Alder Jeanette Morrison,
Yes.
Alder Taisha Walker Myers,
Yes.
Alder Anna Festa,
as stated earlier, no.
Alder Richard Furlow,
Yes.
Alder Evelyn Rodriguez,
Yes.
Alder Ron Hurd,
Yes.
and Alder Charles Decker.
Yes.
Thank you. So items 1, 2, and 4 have been approved to move on to the full board of alders. Yes, Alder Marchand, I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before we adjourn, I wanted just to remind everybody in this meeting that the committee has now amended the budget, sent it to the full board with a favorable recommendation as amended. We certainly have follow-up information to gather and to distribute to colleagues in advance of the second meeting. And the chair and the vice chair will work closely with staff to make sure that happens. The public should know that someone should go on mute. The committee and the public should know that the second reading is Tuesday, May 26th. It's the full Board of Alders special meeting on the budget, and the staff will send out the appropriate notice with the phone-in instructions in advance so people can see that, see those proceedings. And I want to thank everybody for the hard work, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Marchand. At this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Alder Decker, I see some hands. Second by Alder Decker, I think.
Yes. Thank you, Madam.
Any discussion? I'm in favor of adjourning. Yes. Alder Marchand, are you in favor?
Yes.
No. Alder Santiago, Alder DeCola, are you in favor of adjourning, sir?
Yes.
Alder Morrison,
Yes.
Alder Taisha Walker Myers,
Yes.
Alder Festa,
Yes.
Alder Furlow,
Yes.
Alder Evelyn Rodriguez,
Yes.
Alder Ron Hurt,
Yes.
and Alder Charles Decker.
Yes.
Thank you all very much for your hard work, ladies and gentlemen, and the public and city staff. At this time, we are adjourned for this meeting. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, all.
Al,
Yes, Alder.
hi. Good night.
Night. Hit leave meeting down bottom right of your screen.
Yes, I know. But I wanted to say good night to you.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Take care and thank you for all the good work you do.
Thank you too. Stay safe out there.
Yes,
For
thank
you guys, the rest of you guys, you too. All right. All right, we're gonna make everybody disappear.
you.